Hello, it's Scott Newcomb with Zenby AI, and welcome to the Systems Are Sexy podcast. Today's guest has coached over 200 agents and closed over $300 million in real estate. He teaches the simple truth: homeowners choose a strategy first, then an agent. We're diving into how that insight changes marketing, conversion, and growth. So meet David Bartels with Easy Seller Leads. David, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. Been looking forward to it.
Awesome. Well, maybe let's just kind of start there with your company. Like, what problems does Easy Seller Lead solve right now?
Well, at Easy Seller is basically what we're trying to do is we're helping agents install a framework in their business that attracts clients, that turns those that attraction into appointments, so the agent can convert those into a listing presentation, turn one listing into a second or third transaction. And of course, they've got to grow their sphere and convert their sphere at a high level to create a steady flow of listings without cold calling, door knocking, mailers, or ads. That's really the theme we're on.
Gotcha. So I know you done over 300 million in volume, and now you coach about 200 agents. What for you broke through being stuck at like those 50 to 70 deals a year to really scale your business?
Well, like everybody, so I was stuck in this rut for many years, as 53 to 77 transactions a year, and I couldn't ever break through. And it didn't matter how much I hustled to be able to get it done. I mean, the harder I worked, the harder it got, it seemed like. It was just exhausting. And I felt like every conversation I was having was a job interview. For a guy that didn't want a job, a real job, I sure was doing a lot of job interviews, because every listing presentation was hire me. Here's why you got here. Look at my resume. Look how many houses I've sold. Look at and what I realized, and the epiphany that I had, was they weren't really hiring an agent. I mean, I was going on these presentations, on these listing presentations, like, I'm a good agent. You need a good agent. Hire me to be your agent. And what I realized is that they were simply gathering information. Every seller goes through three psychological phases. They start into research mode, where they're just weeks or months before they're ready to list, and they start just thinking about selling their house. And they may be whispering it to friends and family and just kind of and paying attention to the market. At some point, they make this transition into strategy mode. And in strategy mode, it's starting to get more real. They're probably interviewing agents at this point, and they're asking agents questions like, well, how much can you sell my house for? How long is it going to take to sell? What do you do different than everybody else? And that's where I thought I was on a job interview. And I would pitch my own credentials, my CV, my resume really hard to try to convince them that they ought to hire me. And what I learned was, and this was the epiphany, the breakthrough I had. I probably had it when I was in the shower. Okay. So the idea was, I had this breakthrough that says, they're not choosing an agent at all, because they were taking all this information and they were synthesizing it, and they were coming up with their own version of how they thought their house would sell, the best of what they heard from multiple people. And what I realized is they were actually choosing a strategy and then hiring an agent to implement that
Right.
strategy. And so what I realized, and this changed everything for me, is that it was not the agent with the best track record, the best resume, the tall, dark, handsome, agent. It was the agent who had the best strategy. And so they were simply choosing a strategy and hiring an agent to implement it. And so what I simply did, once I understood that, I changed all of my marketing. And so all marketing was the right message, right person, right time. And as soon as I understood that, instead of approaching potential clients and going from, hey, I'm a good agent, you need a good agent, hire me as a good agent, hire me as your agent. I mean, think about it. When I met my wife, if I'd have went from, hi, nice to meet you, you want to get married? She wouldn't be my wife, right? But it's funny how in personal relationships, we know that we got to build it slow. We got to build trust. We got to establish a rapport. We got to earn the right to go to the next logical step. But in real estate, it seems like we go from hi to hire me, and we understand why we get so much resistance and why people think, what they do about some real estate agents. And so as soon as I understood that, and I stopped saying hire me, I started saying, it sounds like you might be thinking about selling your house. Why don't I send you my 10-day sale playbook to get it sold fast and for your price or more, so you can take a look at it and see if it might be something that might make sense for you when you're ready. And I was able to open a lot more doors. So I created this. So all my communication changed from hire me to, can I get you more information that qualified as research? because once I got them to ask for more information, I can then begin the relationship. Now, that's a long answer for a short question, and I can add on to it, but I'm going to stop and take a breather and give you a chance to get in.
No, I was what you were talking about is interesting because, like, the research strategy decision, I'm wondering how early do agents get involved and start to engage with prospects at that point?
Well, the problem that most agents want to show up in stage 3 when they're in decision mode, right? And it's already too late. I mean, I talk to agents all the time, and I have to help them change their mindset where they're like, well, if they're not ready now, it's just a waste of time. And I'm like, what? I mean, I'm going to need a listing in 2 or 3 months too. I mean, how is it a waste of time? I mean, there's some data that really is compelling, and that data says, this is according to NAR's annual survey of home buyers and home sellers, 60% of sellers choose the first agent they meet with. So I want to be first. So I want to get them when they're in research mode. I want to offer them the information. Then I want to say, hey, I wanted to make sure you got it. And I said, you know what? I'd love to come over and give you tips on what to do and what not to do to prepare your home. And we can talk about the different strategies for selling it, so you know what to do when you're ready. And I start pouring into that relationship. I start seeding the soil, because not only do I have the odds of 60% of them choosing me if I have a viable strategy, I demonstrate any kind of competency, but I also have at my advantage the law of reciprocity. And so the more I give, the more they want to return. And the only thing they can really give me is the listing. And after all, they're not going to take my strategies, which I will give them freely, and then give it to another agent because they can't execute my plan. So they're going to hire the agent that gives them the strategy, the agent that offers them the most amount of assistance. So think about this. One more point on this. When I make follow up a cold lead, say I'm an expired or canceled FSBO. That's a popular lead source for real estate agents. So if I'm working on a FSBO expired or canceled lead, I get them on the phone. Oh, we're not ready. We're just thinking about it. I'm a few months. Great. Well, I'll call you in a few months. That's not how I'm doing it, because I know my odds of winning that listing by having a 3, 4, 5 minute phone call is closer to 0 than 10%. But if I can get them to agree to meet with me in person, I raise the odds of winning that listing from almost 0% to 40, 50%. And then if I can add a little value, I can move it to 60%. And if I can do a lot of value, really give them all the information they need to decide which is the right strategy for them when they're ready, I can almost get the likelihood of conversion closer to 80 to 90%. And so the only mistake I can make is waiting till they're ready to try to get in there and to compete for the business. I'm not going to compete for the business at all, because I'm going to win the business before anybody else even knows that it's available for sale.
So, do you advise realtors on what a good offer would look like at the research stage versus decision stage?
Well, I don't get into some of the nuances. So one of the things that, one of the questions when you go meet with a seller, say, well, what can you sell my house for? And so I get to politely explain to them that that's not my job. My job is not to figure out what your house is going to sell for. I mean, if you ask 20 agents what the value of your house is, you're going to get 20 opinions. I don't know. All right. My job is not to figure out what your house is going to sell for. My job is to figure out how to sell it for the highest possible price. And your responsibility is to decide whether or not that's enough money for you to want to accept and sell your house for or not. And so it's a whole different mindset around how to build a relationship and communicate information to home sellers.
I think you had mentioned about eliminating fear-based language. What are some words or phrases that you think agents should stop using?
Well, did this on one of my coaching calls today. One of the words is listing presentation, right? I don't want to go out and give listing Hey, well, let me come over and give you my listing presentation. Well, nobody wants a listing presentation. I mean, today people don't want to buy. They want information. They want to gather information and then make their own decision based on all that information. And so what I say is that I'd like to come over. I'd like to meet the house. I'd like to see the house, get a feel for what's going on. And then if you want, we can take a few minutes and talk about the different strategies for getting your house sold fast and for your price or more. Now, to do that, I got to talk about price, presentation, exposure, and strategy. Those also happen to be the elements of an effective listing presentation. And so if I can just have a conversation with them about doing that, then I'm going to be okay. Because after all, at the end of the day, My mission is to have as many conversations as I can with people who want to talk about selling, people who are likely to sell their house at some point in the reasonably near future.
So, for easier seller leads, how are people finding you? Have you tried different channels to attract people, or is it inbound, outbound? What are you doing for that?
Well, for us, what we're doing primarily is we're doing ads on Facebook and Instagram, Meta. And so that's really prime. Now we also have plenty of repeat and referral clients. For the most part, that's really the channel that has worked best for us. So that's for the easy seller leads business. And then we have a different model for helping our agent clients attract their own clients in. But that's how we reach most of our new agents, is through
Okay.
ads and training. And same theory we use for agents, we use for our own business.
And I believe you had mentioned you're using AI mostly for inbound engagement and not cold outreach. Why do you think that's working for you?
Well, we love, first of all, we love AI. What you can do with AI today is really just mind-boggling. And there's
Yeah.
so many variations of AI, but you're asking specifically more about the AI voice stuff, right? And so
Yes.
one of the things, so we have about 200 clients and we provide a tech stack. And inside that tech stack, we have the voice AI and we have the AI chat and we have the conversational AI, we have all that stuff. And so but for voice, we set everybody with an AI receptionist. So when they call in, we want to answer the phone 100% of the time. And so we just find that it's safer. We can put a little more. We can put a governor on it. Kind of keep it a little more in a box. So when they make a call, we can answer the phone professionally. We can offer to answer frequently asked questions. It's been trained to be able to do that. We can take a message. We can transfer a call. We can book an appointment on a calendar. And in general, we can gather enough information like a relatively competent answering or not answering machine, which a receptionist might be able to do. Okay. And so we really limit it to that at this point. Now, because we're doing cold outreach, we got to be super careful with the outbound stuff
Yep.
because to do the outbound stuff, as you know, you've got to have everything's got to be TCPA compliant. You need written consent and all that stuff. And a lot of the leads that we're working, we haven't yet gotten written consent, which makes it a little scary to be able to do the outbound call. So we really just try to stay away from that for now. But we are really looking to try to crack that model when the time is right. But we need a different lead source to do that.
Is it ever an issue with talking to agents about staying human versus what's automated?
Yeah, well, we're a high tech. So we're using a combination of both in our communications. Listen, all the serious conversations need to be done by an agent. I don't think that agents are in any danger of being replaced by AI. Now, the information that a lot of agents can do can be synthesized by AI and fed back to a consumer, maybe in easier to understand language than an agent can do it. But you still got to verify that the accuracy and because the when you go to chat gpt, it's accessing information from all across the web, and you got to still look at the source and you still got to verify the information. It still gets a lot of things wrong, so you got to be super careful about how you do it. But for us, we're using it in terms of the automation to enhance the sales process that we're doing, to move more quickly, to be a little more responsive. But when it's come time to have a conversation, we're trying to get an agent or an inside sales agent on behalf of the agent to have the conversation, to take it to the last step of the sale process in most cases. Kind of like Amazon's last mile problem they're trying to solve. That's kind of where we are. We can use AI up until a point, and then an agent needs to kind of finish it.
Got it. So, what bottlenecks are you guys seeing in your clients' business? Is it like top of funnel, nurturing, conversion once they're in front of somebody?
Well, there are these 5 pillars that every successful agent has. So I mentioned them are their attraction, it's conversion, it's an attraction, it's engagement, it's conversion, it's leverage. Turn one listing into 2 or 3 transaction, and then nurture. Okay, most agents do 1 or 2 of those things well. And most agents that get into real estate, they're really excited about the transaction part. That's really what they want to do. Nobody told them real estate is one of the greatest. It's the greatest business in the world. It's good. What I call good work if you can get it right. I mean, when you're in the middle of a transaction, it's a fantastic way to make a living, and you can make a super handsome living without some of the backbreaking work that you might do in some other professions, right? The problem is nobody tells you how hard it is to get a transaction. I mean, 71% of agents did 0 transactions last year. That gives you a state in the industry. Only 9% do 10 or more transactions. So the transaction part is easy. It's the attraction that most people really struggle with. And the number one problem that my clients are trying to solve is they just need to have more conversations with people who want to talk about selling their house. Because they tell me that if they can just have more conversations, they'd have more listings. And if they had more listings, then everything would be better. So that's really the problem that we're trying to solve. And that's where they get stuck, is how do they find people that want to talk about selling?
Yeah, this kind of maybe this answers your question there, but like, what's a small shift that agents can make today that they could really help with their conversion over the next 30, 60 days?
Well, I'm a listing focused guy. So one of the small shifts that I tell them is stop worrying about getting more listings. Just focus on getting more listing presentations. Okay. Because in this case, it's activity equals productivity. So what does that sound like? So if I get a lead and I get them on the phone, whether or not, it doesn't matter what the source of the lead could be, a sphere of influence, it could be a FISBO lead, it could be a lead that you bought. It doesn't really matter. When you get them on the phone, stop trying to convince them over the phone that they should list their house with you. Just focus on getting face to face. They say, well, how much do you charge? Well, that depends on the strategy you use. If you use a strategy that's going to sell your house fast, then I can charge less if we're going to use a strategy that's going to take a long time to sell your house. Well, how much can you sell my house for? Well, I'd love to be able to answer that question. When can I see the house so I can do that for you? In other words, whatever their questions are, I'm not going to get into it over the phone, because if I start answering questions or selling myself over the phone, the big risk that I make is that I end up giving them enough information to say no, but not enough information to say yes. So I give no information until I have time to give them all the information. And my focus initially when I get somebody on the phone is just to get face to face for all the reasons we talked about, because I dramatically increase my odds of conversion when I can get face to face. So just focus on the listing presentation and not the listing, because that will be the natural conclusion. Because if I simply take the time to find out what somebody wants and then I spend the rest of the time helping them get it, I don't need any high pressured or slick closing techniques to get them to choose me, because choosing me will be the natural conclusion towards which my effort had been directed. And so keep it really simple. We're just trying to go too fast. We're starting with, hi, you want to get married? And we need to start with, hi, can we meet?
I like that. It's hard to slow down in today's day, isn't it? So I'm curious, I've gone through this process selling a house, and I've had prospective realtors come to my house, do the presentation, and they leave. What do you recommend realtors do once they leave after the presentation? Let's say I need time to think about it, I meet with a couple of people. What do you think the next steps are?
Well, you've got to follow up, number one. So I do a pre-listing email, then I give a comprehensive presentation that's focused on strategy, not based on my resume. Obviously, we talk about who we are and and what they can expect in terms of from me, but we're really put the focus on the strategy. And then we follow up with a summary of everything that we're going to do. And for me, because I like to use this 10-day strategy to sell houses fast and for the seller's price or more, I like to give them a summary, an actual written marketing plan that I will send it as a follow-up to them that kind of details. This is what we're going to do on day one. This is what's going to happen by day 5. This is where we're going to be on day 10, and walk them through that entire process so they have something tangible. Because I promise that I will be the only agent they meet with that gives them a written marketing plan. And that creates massive differentiation between me and everybody else. Everyone else is spending 20, 30 minutes telling them how great they are, and I'm simply focusing on the strategy. Look, I work a lot with FISBOs and expireds. At the end of the day, FISBOs and expireds are trying to solve a problem. My house isn't selling in the case of a FISBO, or my house didn't sell in the case of it expired and canceled. Now, if it's not one of those leads, it's just somebody who's not a FISBO expired, they're interested in selling, they're trying to avoid a particular problem. That is, what if my house doesn't sell? They're afraid that they're going to have a bad experience. And so they're simply, when they do it, they want to do it well, and they want to make sure that they achieve their objective with the least amount of stress and anxieties you can have with selling the house. And so they're trying to avoid a problem. And so as long as you understand that, you can position all your language to make sure that you're addressing those concerns. And by giving them a deliberate written strategy that they believe is going to get the job done, you dramatically increase the likelihood that you're going to win the strategy, and you probably win the listing, and you probably don't have to wait a day or 2 or 3 for them to talk to other people, because you almost, not only do you probably eliminate the other competition, but what you do is you train them to show that if I'm going to hire an agent, I become the standard of which everybody else has to compete against. And most agents aren't able to compete at that level.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I appreciate this. If If there's agents out there now that are interested in learning more about what you guys do, what's the best way to go about finding that out?
EasySellerLeads.com. So
Okay.
just go to EasySellerLeads.com. There's a short video. They can book a call, and we'd be happy to walk them through the strategy we use to help agents get a steady flow of listings without cold calling, door knocking, mailers, or expensive ads that just don't work. Take it from a guy that spent 50 grand on TV ads one year and got 0 listings.
Awesome, David. Thanks for your time. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Scott.